Welcome to the Bad Dog Agility Podcast. I'm Sarah, and today we are starting a special Westminster series of podcasts. So we have the Masters Agility Championship at Westminster coming up, and so we're going to do several podcasts about this event, and we want to talk to some of the people from the past, some people that are going to the event this coming year, and our very first interviewee is going to be Stacey Campbell, who won the top mixed breed at the very first Masters Agility Championship at Westminster. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sarah.
So, that first year, here's what I remember about that first year. Before we even went to the event, before anybody ever went to the event, the agility people are, pretty excited. There's this new event at Westminster. It's a big premier venue. There was going to be live coverage, so television coverage, something that we don't often get in our sport. So we were excited that Westminster added agility, but the rest of the world was excited that Westminster added mixed breeds, or as they like to say, mutts. I saw the word mutt more times in the 1 month leading up to Westminster than I had seen in the years before.
Yeah. Well, I think it was a little unexpected. I was just like anybody else in the agility community. I thought it looked like a fun event to enter. It was going to be televised. I just so happened to run a mixed breed, and I wasn't expecting to get as much hype about my dog as I did. And I think it just started, one person called me for an interview, and it kind of just rippled effect, kept moving, where another show, to the point where I had somebody, friends who live in small towns on the East Coast telling me, oh, I read about your dog in our local paper. So, it was a little unexpected to see how much publicity mixed breeds were getting.
And what you're talking about is the publicity that you got as the top mixed breed winner. But before the event even happened, the headlines where I did a little Google search and limited it to the 1 month before that first Westminster event. So before a single dog had run a single run at this event. And the headlines were, a historic dog show is now allowing mutts to compete. That was Business Insider. Westminster Dog Show opens to gasp mutts. That's the headline on CNBC. Finally, mutts can compete at the Westminster Dog Show from Time, and Westminster Dog Show opens to mixed breeds, and it's about time. ESPN. So, before you're even in the spotlight, the idea of mixed breeds is in the spotlight. And I kind of got that, I kind of got that feeling, but I just didn't understand the full impact until, as you said, after you became that dog and all of the additional publicity that happened after that.
Well, I will say locally, and Roo was getting a lot of publicity for being in this event, and then they did that coverage in People magazine on the mixed breeds, and Roo was featured. So I think for me, it was a little unexpected, and also a little unexpected to do well, sort of pressure to do well, at the event, because I would run into people and they would say, oh, good luck at Westminster. You're going to do great or win. And so it puts a lot of pressure on me and Roo to do well at the show.
So you're saying that there was some spotlight on Roo even before you went.
Yes. There was
as a high, because Westminster is a machine. This is a big operation, and they were asking people for their stories and what makes your dog unique and things like that. And they would highlight different dogs and different stories in the lead up to the event. Right.
And so Roo was one of those dogs that got highlighted. And so I think, even before the event occurred, even from a local perspective, there was a lot of knowledge about Roo going to this show and her story about, you know. So I think after the event, it was much bigger, but there was definitely before the event so much highlight on mixed breeds and then on Roo. So, you know, it definitely puts a little bit of pressure on you going into this event thinking, wow, I really need to get the job done here.
Right. And you're going from California, right?
Right.
Right. So this event is in New York. And
right.
We've been privileged to go once since then in 2016. And I mean, it's a big commitment. It's a big commitment for travel and especially with a large dog.
Right.
And so to go all that way for basically a single day event is its own kind of pressure.
So I think, yes, that is a big trip, but, our dogs are used to traveling cross country for national events. We were also not only, you know, going to New York to enjoy the show, but also to make it a trip.
Right. Yeah. And it is a great trip to turn into a little mini vacation. And, you know, speaking of you know, cross country, big events, lots of pressure, the year before you were the overall top American dog at Westminster. You were the national agility champion for the 24-inch class. The year before that, you were the 24-inch invitational winner. So these are two other national level events that you already had won at this point.
Yes. And that's where I felt like Roo and I were kind of at the height of our game. You know, we were in a really great space as far as competing together. I felt like our teamwork was really solidifying. So, entering a national event, I mean, Roo's a fun dog to run at big events. She kind of thrives, you know, with like the bigger, the better for her. So I just thought she's always fun to run at big events. Why not do this one? It was a first, you know, for mixed breeds, a first for the agility community. So why not be a part of it?
So give us just a little feeling for what the actual event was like. As you say, it was the first Westminster, and that's its own excitement right there. And then to win, and then to have the awards ceremony of winning. Just give us a little sense about what that was all like.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of pomp and circumstance surrounding it. And also, I think the general public was there. They were open to go to all areas where the dogs were located. The rings were, I would say, more crowded than our dogs are normally used to. It was also very hot in the environment itself because of all the lighting, you know, dealing with stop-starting due to, you know, it being on TV, so a lot of waiting around. So that, you know, a lot of dogs had problems with that. Also, you know, because it was so crowded, people were hanging over the rings. And so, you know, your dog had to be able to deal with that stress. And it was just, I think, for me, exciting because, you know, we're not normally competing in front of such a large audience. So it made it a lot of fun, and also to sort of showcase like, hey, that my mixed breed can do this too. You know, you don't have to have a purebred dog.
Right. And, you know, this is a great time for me to sprinkle in a little history, just a tiny bit of history, because those who are new to agility, or maybe those who are listening to this, they're excited about Westminster and they're not even involved in the sport at this time. Mixed breeds were actually allowed to compete in agility as a sport through AKC starting in 2010. And the first Westminster was 2014. So we're actually 4 years into mixed breeds competing week in, week out, weekend in, weekend out. And at the national events, like I said, you won the national event the year before that. So, you know, mixed breeds competing in agility in and of itself to the insider was not news, but it was the addition. So really it was the addition of agility, and then because mixed breeds can compete in agility, they come along for the ride into the Westminster that was getting all of this, this hype and this publicity. So I think we were starting to get a sense of that before the event, but then, like you were saying earlier, after the event, it just exploded. So tell us about some of your favorite write-ups, segments, and things like that happened after the event as the winner.
Well, I would say one of my top memories with Roo is actually going center stage with her at Madison Square Garden. It was just unreal that here I was with my dog who, used to have trouble focusing, sniffing on the ground, reactive to other dogs, was now, healing center stage, to accept an award. So that's probably one of my top memories. And I mean, I also think, walking through the airport heading home, and on CNN, I see a clip of the two of us. So it's just, unexpected that and really nice surprise. That I wasn't going to this event expecting any of this. So, it was just fun, a lot of fun to see.
Right. And I think I should have trademarked it, but Esteban came up with the phrase, the Roo effect. And he predicted, right after that win, that we would see more mixed breeds in the sport, more beginners in the sport, because of Roo. And not just, there's kind of two levels to this too. There is agility on TV, which is hugely impactful to our sport. And then there is the highlight of you can do this sport with any dog. And that's what Roo kind of exemplified. And I think, I'm sure it was crazy for you, but even as a person interested in agility, I think it was crazy for everybody. Obviously more crazy, for you day to day, but to see our sport have so much of the limelight. And Esteban and I each had our own moment where we thought, whoa, this really is big. And he was, bedside as a doctor, in a nursing home, and they have the TVs on, and he heard the word agility, and so his ears perked up, and they're talking about Roo on Good Morning America. And, that was his moment of saying, my gosh, this is really taking off. And I think my moment was, I'm just at my day job in software, and everybody knows that I do agility with my spare time, right? And suddenly everybody's asking me, hey, what do you think about mutts? What do you think about mutts and agility? And I'm like, I don't even know, what are you talking about in terms of where are you coming from? And it was all of the press that Westminster was getting. And so those were kind of the moments that we each had. And for you, it was just moment after moment after moment of realizing how big of a deal this was in a much larger community than our small agility community. Right.
And I don't know how much of an effect, did it increase the number of people entering the sport, or the popularity for local classes for people to take with their dogs. That I don't know. So it's hard to say how much an effect it had, but I do think it probably brought more knowledge about the sport. People who didn't even know what dog agility was now knew.
Right. So do you have any kind of different thoughts on the whole experience now that it's 4 years later, looking back? Or have there been any things that have happened, well after the fact that all kind of go back to that win?
So probably the biggest thing that's happened since our win has been a writer that from LA contacted me that she wanted to do a movie about Roo. And so that project is currently being set up. The script is being developed. It's been written several times, in fact. And a production company actually picked up the film rights to the movie. So that's still going on. When the movie is going to be out there, that I'm unsure about, but, that whole process is still going on.
That's crazy and crazy awesome. Congratulations on that. Yeah. And it is such an interesting story. Roo's story is such an interesting and compelling story. And I think that's what draws a lot of people. It's not just that mixed breeds are competing. That's exciting, but with mixed breeds, what goes hand in hand with mixed breeds are these rescue dogs and these rescue stories and these, battling against adversity kind of scenarios that make for such compelling stories.
Yes. I think it's sort of that rags to riches, that sort of grabs at people's hearts. And I do think Roo has a good story to her. I know she's my dog, but so, but how much of that they're going to have in the movie, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's Hollywood's problem right there. they have to figure out how to make all of that work. But just the idea that they were even interested is a really cool kind of cherry on the top for the whole story. And then actually you have perspective of what it meant to be the first versus all of the subsequent ones, because you actually went back and won the top mixed breed again the next year. So how different was that experience going back the second time?
Well, again, I think a little bit more pressure of showing that your dog could do this again. I also think the event, just like any event, each time you go, the first year, I think things were a little unexpected. They weren't sure how to do certain things. So I think each year things are getting refined, for television. And they did a little bit more showcasing of the dogs at the event itself, before you ran. It was fun again. I think it's just, if you go, it's just not anything like a local trial because it is sort of made for TV. So you have to really prepare yourself and prepare your dog because, it's a lot. It can be a lot for a dog to take in. Like I said, with the huge amount of crowds in a small space, having a camera in their face. So there's lots of things for the dogs to really have to deal with.
Absolutely. And so, before we wrap up, I will tell people that we have had podcasts over the years on the different Westminsters. I believe we've covered every Westminster Agility Championship, the Masters Agility Championship, every one that has happened so far. We've talked to some of the winners. We've talked to Paul Campanella, who is the Director of Companion Events at Westminster, about their plans for the future. So if you can't get enough Westminster, there will be links on the show notes page to these other podcasts where you can get a more in-depth view on the behind the scenes, a more in-depth view of the courses and the difficulty level and some discussion along those lines. But today we really wanted to kind of catch up with Stacey and see, revisit that whole phenomenon that you and Roo were just in the middle of.
Well, it was nice catching up with you, Sarah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And that's it for this podcast. Come watch as America's top agility dogs race against the clock in the exciting finals of the 2018 Masters Agility Championship at Westminster. The live action at Pier 94 begins at 7 p.m. on Saturday, February 10th. More than 300 dogs will compete for the ultimate prize, and new this year, an expanded 60 finalists, 12 from each height class, will tackle the challenging finals course in a bid to be the Masters Agility Champion. For tickets, go to westminsterkennelclub.org. We'll also put a link on the show notes page. If you can't come to Manhattan, then tune in to the Fox Broadcast Network on Sunday, February 11th from 4:30 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time to catch the action-packed finals of the Masters Agility Championship at Westminster. Happy training!